So what's up, guys? Hopefully you're all doing well, and hopefully you've all been coping well with this heat that we've had here in the UK. I mean, today has been absolutely baking. Um, so I want to give you guys a little bit of an update on the missing hat situation. Obviously, as you know, Mike Hat's been missing now for a good few weeks. Obviously. Interesting, and also sort of raise the update today. Obviously, we might be close to actually getting Hat back. It turns out he's been for the last few weeks. He's actually been down in the underground car park, in the underground garages. And the caretaker has been feeding him. It's been the same caretaker who came and knocked on our door a few weeks back and told us that obviously the day he went missing, and told us that he'd seen out in the bin chute. That same caretaker is the one that's been feeding him for the past 3 weeks, for the past 3 weeks or so. It didn't think to come and knock on our door and tell us that the hat was down there, so that we could try and go down there and try and get hold of it. Which is obviously what we'll do tomorrow. Obviously, we'll be, tomorrow morning when caretaker's in, obviously, in work, we'll grab him and we'll, get him to take us down to the underground garage so that we can get hold of the hat. We tried to get hold of him a little while ago. We were down by the underground garage, shaking a box of hat biscuits. And the thing was, it kept coming right up close. As again, we couldn't get into the underground garages because they were padlocked up. And obviously, the caretaker had gone home, so we weren't able to get into the garages and get hold of him. Which is what we might be able to do tomorrow. We might be able to get into the garages and obviously, sort of get hold of him. I'm feeling quite fairly positive that we'll be able to do that. I think we'll be able to do that. I am annoyed at the caretaker, the fact that the hat's been down there for the last 3 weeks and he's been feeding him and not actually told us he was down there. Not even gotten us to try and come down to the garages to try and get hold of him. As we could have done that had he come and knocked on our door and told us he was down there so that we could come down and try and get hold of him. Obviously, we didn't know that until today. But at least looking at him, he seems okay. He seems perfectly fine, perfectly healthy. He's walking okay. So he does appear to have been uninjured. That was my main concern, was that he'd been injured. Perhaps jumping down the bin chute, because obviously that's what the caretaker said. He jumped right down the bin chute, and that's obviously a good 50-60 foot drop. But he does seem to be okay, which is the main thing. He was meowing. The thing was, he was meowing, but he wouldn't come kind of close enough for us to try and put our hands through the thing and get hold of the railing, the gate, and obviously get hold of him. Like, he kept coming right up to the gate. We had the biscuits and everything. He kept coming when we were calling him. He kept coming right up to the gate, but then as we were trying to grab him, he was sort of backing away, like he was getting scared, and he was sort of backing away from the fence, like he was backing, obviously, as he was getting scared. There was a guy who said, "Oh, I live on the ground floor, and if you want, on my door, I've got something." And he had used to hop through the padlock, but he might have gone into trouble for that. So, obviously, at least we know that he's okay. We've been thinking the last few weeks that someone had hold of him, like someone had gotten hold of him, someone had him in their house. That was what our immediate thought was, but. It turns out he's been down in the underground garages all this time, and we were none the wiser. We didn't know that he'd been down there all this time, as no one's told us he was down there. The caretaker's been feeding him for the past 3 weeks and not even bothered to come up on the door and tell us he was down there, so that we could go down there and try and get hold of him, which is what we'll try and do tomorrow. Fingers crossed we will get hold of him. Obviously, he knew it was us. He knew our voices. You could tell that, but he was just really scared. Like, as I said, he kept coming up to the gate, and every time we tried to we were trying to grab him, he was sort of backing away. Because he was getting a bit scared. Obviously, you know, it's annoying the fact that the caretaker never told us, like him knocked on my door and said, he's down there. If you want, I'm trying to get hold of him. The fact that he knows it's our hat. He knows it's that we've been looking for him. He knows it's our hat that's been missing for the last 3.5 weeks or so. You know, as he even came and knocked on the door on the Monday, on that Monday morning, and asked if we were looking for a ginger hat. So he knew that we were, he knew that we were looking for a ginger hat. He knew that the ginger, it was our hat. So why did he not come up on our door to let us know that the hat was down there? Had we known he was down there, we could have gone down there and tried to get hold of him. But it is frustrating because it feels like the caretaker should have actually come to us and told us that the hat was down there, but he didn't. He didn't do that. It's annoying, but I kind of wish that he would have told us about that, but he didn't. But he didn't. So it's a bit frustrating. I mean, yeah, at least we know that he's okay. Like that's the thing. I mean, we can see that he was okay. We can see that he didn't appear to be injured in any particular way, which was the main. Well, obviously, as I said, was my main concern was that he had gotten injured in some way, but thankfully he's not. Thankfully, he's not got injured. When he didn't look injured, he looked. I mean, he was walking perfectly fine. He wasn't limping or anything, which is which is a good sign. Obviously, somehow he's jumped down the bin chute and not got hurt, and that is a bloody miracle. The fact he's jumped that far down and not got hurt, I don't know how he's managed that. I mean, how the hell did he jump that far down and not get hurt? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. But that's cats for you. I guess cats are very good at jumping from that far down and not getting hurt. So But yeah, fingers crossed. Tomorrow we might be able to obviously we can get the hair taper in the morning, and obviously get him to take us down to the underground garages in the morning, and we'll try and grab hold of him then. That's what else we can do. Just wait for the morning and try and get hold of him then. Um, but yeah, I think the relief for us is that we know he's okay, we know he's safe, and that is the main thing. That's all we really care about, to be honest, is that he's safe, he's okay. That he's not injured in any way. As that was the thing that I think we were really worried about. An unexpected is the possibility of him being injured. In some way, shape, or form. But obviously looking at him, obviously when we were down there a little while ago, you could see that he seemed absolutely fine. He didn't seem to be too badly injured or anything, which is good news. Something obviously we're ultimately very glad about. But yeah, I mean, as I said, it just frustrates me that he's been down there all this time, and Hairtech is not even come and knocked on our door. Like, why did he not come on our door and tell us he was down there? Why he's been feeding our cat all this time, not even told us he was down there. Like that's a fucking, that's fucking, like, that's out. I'm sorry, but that's out of order. He's so in the wrong for that. He's been feeding our cat. He knows we've been looking for the cat, the last however, 3 or 4 weeks. And he's not even come and knocked on our door and told us that the cat was down there. We didn't even know he was down there. And he told me, obviously, we had gone down there, and I went down to the garages on that Monday morning, and I was all in it. I just assumed at that point that he'd been down there, but he disappeared off somewhere else. I knew that he was around somewhere. I mean, I kind of suspected that maybe he was still down there, but we just didn't, that was, a suspicion that I had. I've been thinking, could he still be down in the underground garages? Could he have been in there? Could he have actually been in there all this time? And it turns out he was in there all this time, or he has been in there all this time, and we just didn't know. It's so crazy to think about the fact that he's been in there, all this time, and the caretaker's not even told us. Like, the guy is an absolute bastard. I'm sorry, but he is. He's an absolute bastard. I chiefly swim for him right now. You know, the fact that he didn't even bother to, you know, he didn't even, and I don't say, oh, you're outstanding the underground garages. At least, at least if he'd have gone down there, the let us in him, he'd have tried to get hold of him. But, you know, what, I mean, what a bastard. I'm sorry, but, you know, I have to say. But at least, I mean, I feel like this is, you know, it's somewhat of an update and it's a more positive update. You know, I wanted to give you know, a bit of a positive update on this situation, and it's nice to have been able to give that site that sort of, you know, positive update and to say that, you know, we are potentially quite close to getting him back. You know, home this time tomorrow. We may well have him back in house. He may well be back, you know, back in here where he may be back where he belongs. You know, I think we built that hold of him tomorrow. I think we will be able to do that. You know, if he knows us, I don't know why he'd be scared as well. If he knows us, he knows who we are. So I think we'll probably be able to get hold of him when we go down there in the morning. You know, we'll get hold of the caretaker in the morning and obviously get him to let us in there so that we can get hold of him. You know, because I'm sure he'll come to us if we do. You know, I'm fairly confident on that, to be honest. But we'll see what happens anyway. You know. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this little update. Just what I did with that update. So this evening. Bit of a crazy update, but there you go. So, but at least it's a more positive one. So I hope you enjoyed this video anyway. I'll see you for another one soon.